You're looking at a pretty disappointed man. It's a 14th of August, Saturday. I'm just coming back from an anti-vaccine passport demonstration in central London. It's only 2:15 and I'm already coming back. And the reason I'm coming back was because it was pathetic. You know, it was an opportunity, if ever they'd like to take it, for the BBC to tell the truth by saying there was a few hundred demonstrators there, because that's all there were there. A few hundred. Now, it wasn't very well publicised. And in fact, I was still home at 11:15 before I knew that it was definitely on, because I didn't see anything other than that until I finally saw something on Twitter and decided to go. You know, and I go to everyone, you know, and I never really know how much difference it's making. But today's one really was pathetic, and it was almost tiny demonstrations are probably worse than no demonstration. Because the optics are such that, you know, it's supposedly a tiny number of people protesting. You know, that hasn't always been the case. But it was today. And, you know, we walked along from Charing Cross Station down to Whitehall, round Parliament Square and back up Whitehall, and that's when I decided that I probably could do more good if I came home and started thinking about what we had to do. You know, they say that tyranny is always better organised than freedom. Today was a demonstration of that perfectly. You know, there was some, you know, there were some enthusiastic individuals there, but everybody was pretty disappointed with the numbers, and I could see everybody else turning around looking to see how many people were there, and there really weren't very many. And there were quite a number of photographers there, which maybe I never noticed in the bigger demonstrations. But you know, there was a guy and he had a little stool with him, and he was walking backwards and then putting his stool down and standing on it, so he could see the tiny number of people there. You know, and when you contrast that with what the French are doing, for instance, you know, it really is pathetic. You know, they have big demonstrations in 150 different towns and cities all across France. And this is all we could come up with in central London. You know, we have to do better than this. They're just going to bury us if we can't do any better than this. I'm thinking maybe the local things might be better. You know, set up a stall in your local town, start talking to people, start spreading the word, because we know that so many people are just swallowing everything that comes through their television. You know, we know that. I don't know why it is that the French are so much more willing to protest and make a nuisance of themselves, and we aren't. I don't know why that is. I mean, in a very basic level, it might just be that the French are better than us. Yeah, that could be the reason, but I'm not really buying that. You know, France is a civilized, rich, free, liberal democracy, just the same as we are, or have been until very recently. Why is it that they can, you know, raise those many millions of people and we can't? You know, I wish I knew. Idea I had was, I remember a while back, a year or two back, seeing a video posted on, it was probably YouTube I guess, of the police in some northern town somewhere, and they'd gone to, you know, detain or arrest or question some group of Muslims for whatever it was. I don't know what it was. You know, I can't remember what the thing was, what the reason was. But you know, they turned up. You know, there was maybe half a dozen of them, 2 or 3 police cars, and out of nowhere came dozens and dozens of cars, presumably all filled with Muslims. You know, the video was dark. They looked kind of Asian looking, so you know that was the assumption, that was the impression that I got. And there were so many people turned up, so many cars, that when these guys all disappeared, when the guys that were being questioned by the police, you know, sort of made a run for it, the police couldn't get their police cars out. They couldn't get their police cars out because there were just too many of them. And I guess the pursuit was called off. And I was thinking that, you know, the marching and the protesting and the demonstrations, you know, I guess they help. I mean, they help if they're big ones, but if they're tiny, pathetic little examples today, like today, they don't help. They make it worse. Because it highlights, you know, it visualizes, you know, to the cameras, you know, supposedly what little support we have. You know, it's not the complete story, because it's difficult to organise protests at the moment because they're trying to cut down on protests. And you know, even when there is a big protest, you know, they start going after the organisers. But I'm thinking that there has to be some other sort of active resistance, so that, for instance, you know, if, you know, mandatory vaccinations of the whole population come down the line, then eventually you're going to get to a situation where you know, they're going to turn up mob-handed at your door. You know, there's going to be the bloke with the syringe, and then you know, a health assistant with them or something, and then 2 or 3 burly coppers to enforce it. And I was just thinking, if we could sort of build a network of people locally, so in each local area we had 500 people that we could say, look, they're at my house. Send out an alert, they're at my house, and 500 people turn up and prevent them from doing what they're doing. Now, I think that would work. I think that would work. There's that famous passage in the Gulag Archipelago where Solzhenitsyn says that they were all sitting in the camps wondering how they got there. And they all got there because they all meekly stayed in their houses and waited for the secret police to turn up. Whereas if they'd had a network of people armed with pickaxe handles and cudgels and knives, and actively push them back, made it so that every time the secret policeman left his house, he wasn't sure whether he was going to be coming home again. Build a network like that, we don't have to be violent. I'm not suggesting we be violent, but we're just if we turn up 500 people to get in their way, there's nothing they could do. What local police force has 500 policemen ready to turn up at the same address? Normally it's half a dozen. I don't suppose there was more than a few dozen that turned up in Plymouth the other day. Even if we are in the minority, which it appears that we are, that doesn't make our bodies public property for them to inject whatever they fucking feel like into us. If we're not sovereign over our own bodies, we're not sovereign over anything. Because this is the example, isn't it, of, again, one of the founding fathers said that made this point about democracy being two wolves and a sheep deciding what to have for lunch. That's the limitations of democracy. That's when democracy just turns into mob rule. That other phrase somebody said again, I think it was one of the founding fathers saying your right to swing your fist ends at the tip of my nose. And you could turn that around and quite reasonably say that your democracy ends at my epidermis. Skin layer is, I don't know what it is. stalls, you know, where you know, just talk to people, you know, talk to people to find out what they really think, because most of them probably haven't thought very deeply about this. You know, most of them just think, well, let's everyone just get the vaccine, and that's all, and then it's all over, and then everything's fine, and it's no problem. Everyone just get the vaccine. You know, what are you making a fuss about? We need some clever people on our side, you know, persuasive people. Because as far as I'm concerned, the only, you know, I could be wrong about COVID, I could be wrong about the vaccines, I could be wrong about masks and lockdowns and PCR tests and all that stuff, you know, I could be wrong about all of it. But you can't say that I'm wrong about protecting my own bodily integrity. And of course the counter to that is that, you know, well, everybody has the right to be not around an infected person. Well, you know, do they have that right, or are they just asserting that right? Because that's everybody else, that's what everybody else is doing. You know, it seems as if just being a normal human being, you know, with all the danger that entails, you know, with all that, everyone sniffs and sniffles and coughs and lurgies that everyone else has, you know, suddenly that's not considered good enough. Everyone has to be sanitised. That's what they call it in France, as the vaccine passport, the pass sanitaire. Everyone has to be sanitised, disinfected. Now, if you're not disinfected and have gone through a 3-stage decontamination process, you're not allowed to be around other human beings. You know, you'd struggle to make that rationale stick, even if it was Ebola, even if it was rabies. But it isn't. You know, it's the equivalent to a bad flu year, a very bad flu year, perhaps. And for that, we're just ignoring the Nuremberg Code, ignoring the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and God knows what other, you know, sensible and principled legislation was put in for just this kind of scenario. That's why we have things like that, is to protect people in these sort of extreme situations. I mean, it's not extreme, but they're making it extreme. I mean, that's why they bothered to do it, because they thought, well, you know, we've got to, you know, we had the Nazis, you know, experimenting on concentration camp inmates, you know, to their heart's content, do whatever they fucking like to them, you know, for some spurious reason about advancing medical science or something. And all the horrors that entailed. And so they thought, well, you know, we have to write down some rules, write something down, so this doesn't happen again. And of course, when it's likely to happen again is in the throes of an emergency, even if this was an emergency, which it isn't. But when everyone's told that it's an emergency, you know, 18 months ago, nobody would have agreed with the idea that the government could tell you what you're supposed to put in your own body. Almost nobody would have agreed with that. And now it's like, you know, 75% agree with it, it seems, if we're to believe YouGov. You know, after today, you know, if I could, you know, if I could escape to America, I would. You know, this is my country. This is my home. And I've spent my whole life trying to stick up for it. I've tried to sort of tout its virtues and make excuses for its shortcomings, because it's not perfect. But if I could leave, I would. You know, after today's debacle. But you know, there's not, you know, the thing is there anywhere to run to? I mean, it's Texas and Florida and South Dakota and a few other of those so-called free states. But they're even talking now in America about, you know, insisting on vaccinations for interstate travel. So even if you did get an escape to Texas, it would mean you couldn't leave. You couldn't go to Tennessee or New Mexico. And they've already announced it in Canada, you know, inter-province travel, you know, on at least on public transport, not necessarily on people in their cars, but they've already announced it, you know, to go on a plane, on a train, or cruise ships, you know, you've got to be vaccinated. I mean, I suppose in reality there is nowhere to run. You know, Texas and Florida at the moment are in sort of beacons of genuine freedom. But you know how long will they last? Will they have to secede from the United States to keep themselves free? Yeah, because Biden's already and his fucking minions have been talking about getting Ron DeSantis, you know, he's got to get out of the way so we can vaccinate all the Floridians. Is that what we call Florida people? Floridians? You know, I'm kind of at my wit's end, really, after today. I really am, because you know, if that's all the people we're going to get to come out on an issue as important as that, the Feffel Johnson gets to decide what I put in my body. You know, if that's not fascism, I don't know what fucking is. Or communism, or whatever it is, totalitarianism. Just seems so difficult to wake people up in this country. And it seems so easy to do it in France. But I suppose the thing that we have to realise, and I don't think that most of us do realise, and this has been niggling at me for a little while, is that, you know, I went up to that demonstration today thinking I would join into something that somebody else had organised. And what happened? 300 people turned up. You know, we have to realise that the only people who's going to get us out of this is ourselves. There is no cavalry coming over the hill. So we've got to think. We've got to think, you know, and to the 500 or so people who actually look at this video, you know, you've got to think, and you've got to start talking to other people and get them to think. I wish I knew what to do. Anyway, ideas on a postcard, and try and stay free, won't you?